So many thanks to Anita and to all of you and to everyone that was a part of bringing a Black History Month series and even this event today together. I never knew that we would be here, but I'm so happy that we are in this place. So, I was invited to give y'all a talk. A talk. Now, you know what that means in our profession. You know, you got to have it all scripted out, and you got to have your footnotes and such, and swan. You know, I only have 5, 6 slides to show y'all. That's unacceptable. Should probably be 15 plus. So it is not the kind of talk that I normally give. Why have I done this? Because it is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And Martin Luther King Jr., I almost said Martin Luther King Jr. Sr. Martin Luther King Sr. said, to those who wish to speak, to those who wish to communicate, you got to make it plain. Make it plain so that it's for everybody, not just those who have the training and really the privilege of being able to read. And I don't just mean the privilege of having books, although I understand y'all gonna have a free book giveaway. You know, I might I might come back for that. A free book? What? But there are a lot of folks out here who never learned to read. And there is a legacy in that, but that's not what I'm going to talk about today. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. I indeed woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. You may have heard folks say, I'm just so thankful I woke up with my mind in my right mind. Some of you know what it's like to wake up not in your right mind. It's not great. But to wake up with your mind stayed on freedom, the source of that longing thought, freedom, that driving force, that radical imaginary, that prototypic Afrofuturism, that distant, blessed place at the end of the universe's long moral arc. And its close and necessary sibling, justice. Justice, sprout from the deepest, darkest, most sacred bits of myself, descendant as I am of the long enslaved. I, like King, a Black gone too soon ancestor, have inherited a hunger that seems never to be satisfied. This hunger, conceived in the cages of West African outposts and refined in the bellies of the countless European slavers that streamed for centuries further westward still. This struggle, this fight, this journey toward freedom has taken so many lives, some in death, some in a life depleted by a slow siphoning of resources, of opportunities, of investment. And due to the cleverness of our laws, it remains appropriate to think about the predicament of Black Americans as one of oppression. And sometimes people be scared of that word. I'm gonna say it again, oppression. It exists, y'all. So these American laws, mutable as COVID, the statutes that King named unjust laws, laws to be disobeyed openly, as he promised he would and did, have evolved over the course of every generation of African Americans to produce crisis after crisis after crisis. Let us never forget the line between Till and Floyd. Let us never forget the sturdy thread between the infamous plantations of the South and the less frequently referenced small kitchens, nurseries, shops, presses, modest farms, construction sites, and countless other spaces throughout this great nation into which our great calamity forced us, and the current prison economy, the jaws of which currently hold, as you well know, a disproportionate number of Black inmates. Last year, September, not even a year ago, and I don't know if you can see this that clearly, but I'll just let you know here, we have a racial distribution of the occupants of Cook County Jail. I'm gonna read it for you since, I have my glasses, but sometimes they don't be working so good. So out of compassion for y'all, 74.1% Black. 74% Black. What? How is this possible? Without our knowing, without our talking, without our resisting, this is absolutely unconscionable. Numerically, mathematically. It doesn't take more than what? A sixth grade mathematical education to do the math that Black people don't even make up 20% of American population. Well, we hovering around 13, 14. This is, just think on it. I know y'all smart. I know y'all smart. I respect y'all for that. But this is simple mathematics, and we need to start to do it. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for a crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted. Now, I have to pause here. Now, you know I'm reading the 13th Amendment. Come on, y'all. I have to pause here. Do you know that the vast majority of cases in this nation, criminal cases, never see a courtroom? I don't care what Law and Order done told you. I don't care what Dick Wolf is talking about. Okay, gung gung. That ain't it. Most of these things are decided in small back rooms where someone is offered a plea deal and a choice. Do you want to go away for 20 years? Or do you want to go away for 1 year, 2 years? If you plead guilty to what we have accused you of, you can bypass all this, fair argumentation and, the judge and all this stuff. You can bypass that. Just go straight to jail. So let me continue. I'm sorry. I told my students I'm the rabbit hole professor. I'm doing it already here, but don't worry, I'm watching the time. I'm alert to the time. All right. So I'm gonna start it again because it's worth repeating. And if you haven't seen the film, The 13th, if you don't want to do any more reading, I understand. Y'all got a lot of reading to do, okay? Books on books on books on books. So if you're looking for a sort of a quick way to understand the legacy of the 13th Amendment, please go look at the film, The 13th. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Whew, we did it. We did it. Totally, slavery is done, okay? What is put in its place? Let us not forget the racial disparities that are so popular. And you were talking, dear Dean, about how we have Twitter now. I'm not on there. I don't even know how to work it either, so I very much empathize. But we have social media now, and it is very popular to call out these racial disparities. It's real cute now. We have and have always had gaps. This is nothing new. I'm sure that you can already think of them. Really popular in the last few years has been the maternal and infant mortality rate gap, the wealth gap, both new and generational, the health gap, the employment gap, the social mobility gap, the education gap. I mean, I could continue, but who has time really? There are gaps, gaping space between us. The point is, we have always had a race problem. And many Afro-pessimists have deconstructed projections of Black liberation. It's been too long. It's been too long. How long are we going to deal with this? We just had this whole series, and some folks have very strong feelings about what Nicole Hannah-Jones has been up to with the 1619 Project. How long? But I'm getting ahead of myself. So many Afro-pessimists, such as Frank Wilderson, tell us that Afro-pessimism is pessimistic about the claims theories of liberation make when these theories try to explain Black suffering, or when they analogize Black suffering with the suffering of other oppressed beings. It's all the same. It does this by unearthing and exposing the meta-aporias strewn like landmines in what these theories of so-called universal liberation hold to be true. But this is a celebration of King, the man who told us the moral arc of the universe is indeed long, but it bends toward justice. This is actually a quote, a little fun fact. King didn't write that. He was quoting Theodore Parker. Again, under the current circumstances, I don't mind that, he's getting a lot of, credit for that, but it's actually not the case. So y'all should just know where this is sourced from. What to do when one only has eyes to see the sameness, the cyclical nature of our predicament. Many of you know that song, the verse, "We shall overcome." We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. Someday. As King called once to us from the steps of the state capitol of Montgomery, Alabama, I know you are asking today, how long will it take? How long? Somebody is asking, how long will prejudice blind the visions of men, darken their understanding, and drive bright-eyed wisdom from her sacred throne? Somebody's asking, when will wounded justice lying prostrate on the streets of Selma and Birmingham and communities all over the South be lifted from this dust of shame to reign supreme among the children of men? Somebody is asking, when will the radiant star of hope be plunged against the nocturnal bosom of this lonely night, plucked from weary souls with chains of fear and the manacles of death? How long will justice be crucified and truth bear it? The litany that follows King's words, which I have excerpted here, look into it if you want to, it's a wonderful speech. But the litany that follows is a puzzle that I am still, in my big age, I know I'm not that big age, but I'm big enough age, I've been trying to unravel this for some time. So the puzzle is, how can it be said in this call and response, how long, not long? How long, not long? The shout and the firm refrain, that's that good call and response we are known for as Black people. But beyond that, King interprets Black people as having made progress. I cannot say that we have not. For the time being, it is not acceptable to be known as a racist, to be called, at least to your face, man, what you just said there, that's racist. Oh, I'm sorry, Ben, I told you I wasn't going to be running around on this mic, but I think it's still in place. But there's a lot of freaking out over being called racist. I think that is part of the legacy of King and those who were the foundations under the movement, largely black women. Look it up, look into it. Y'all smart. Look it up. So, for the time being, we don't want to talk about being racist. It's not cool. It hurts the pockets. You know, they say in this great nation, you got to follow the money. That's where it's at. Follow the money. I mean, that has never steered me wrong as a researcher. Ever, okay? You better follow them coins, follow them bags, all right? But we don't want to be known as racist, at least not in an individual sense, which is our favorite way to view racism, after all. We want to talk about racism as an individual problem, right? That's our favorite stuff. The battle against anti-black racism continues to be set up as a battle against those proverbial bad apples. The amount of times I've heard bad apples, I don't want to eat apples no more at all. You know, just let them be forever. Good or bad, I don't want no apples. So these racists are low-down folks, we're taught. These are ignorant folks, we're reminded. These are scapegoat folks. Those folks, we are willing to drive off into the wilderness to take the stain of anti-black hate off of the rest of us. The problem is so much bigger. I cannot tell you how much I would like for this predicament in which we find ourselves to be caused by an ignorant few. If it were only a fraction of us that hate black people, if punishing or ostracizing these few would actually improve our life chances, alas, it cannot be so. We must face the fact that as King foretold, our problems run much, 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 much deeper and wider than that. We have very little confidence in our ability to adapt, of the ability of our systems to adapt when soaked in the water from the same well that disgorged the Middle Passage and everything that followed. Racial capitalism cannot be shrugged off so easily. And King saw this as clearly as he saw his own death gaining on him. In 1968, the day before he was killed, King gave his final speech in Memphis, Tennessee, having gone there to support the great sanitation workers' strike. He says, "And another reason I am happy to live in this period is that we have been forced to a point where we are going to have to grapple with the problems that men have been trying to grapple with through history, but the demands didn't force them to do it. Survival demands that we grapple with them. Men for years now have been talking about war and peace, but now no longer can they just talk about it. It's no longer a choice between violence and nonviolence in this world. It's nonviolence or non-existence. And that is where we are today." King continues, "And also in the human rights revolution, if something isn't done and done in a hurry to bring the colored peoples of the world out of their long years of poverty, their long years of hurt and neglect, the whole world is doomed." Now, I'm just happy that God has allowed me to live in this period to see what is unfolding. And I'm happy that he's allowed me to be in Memphis. Our intertwined and entangled lives. This is what King was getting at the day before he was killed. There is no you without me. It can't be. And for this reason, the battle against all manner of injustice is a moral imperative and also a survival strategy. Oh, well, I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind and it was stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. I got to tell y'all a story. It's story time, y'all. I wish I had a book. You know, back in the day when you would go to the library. I know y'all love libraries. Come on, y'all. Y'all in this room. I know y'all love libraries like I used to love libraries. And I would go inside, and the librarian would have a nice picture book. And the picture book would have words inside. I always loved when there were a lot of words inside so we could look at the pictures more. When I was about that age, when you feel so excited to learn something new, and I was reading very early. You know, God bless my parents. God bless what I now think of as privilege that I experienced as a child that I read very early. I was 3. My mother told me when I was 4 about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And she said it to me like this. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a great man. He fought to free us as Black people. He is your ancestor. He is your legacy as well as mine. And I need you to know that they killed him. I was 4 years old. My first lesson about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. included the fact, and emphatically the fact, that he was murdered, killed for helping my people. I had that concept early, before I could even understand fully the causes, the cycles, the crises that informed my own self-recognition. Even at 4, I knew what racism was. Come on, y'all. It's in the water. But it was much later that I understood what was missing from the rest of my education about King. So I used to be in Mr. Falgaris' class, and he was a music teacher. And I loved Mr. Falgaris. He taught me a lot of stuff. Once upon a time, he taught me the Negro National Anthem, and I got in trouble for ad-libbing on it because my mom thought that Mr. Falgaris had taught me it. And I said, nah, Mama, those were my own ad-libs. And then all was well. All right, so something else Mr. Falgaris taught me was the Dr. King song. Now, see if you know this one. Here you go. Dr. King, Dr. King, Dr. King was a civil rights leader. Dr. King, Dr. King, he had a dream. He told everybody to love one another. He wanted us all to love one another. He told everybody to love one another, and that was his dream. It was much later that I understood the cost of this dilution of King. I now understand why it was important for my mother to impress upon me the result of King's efforts on our behalf. Why it was necessary not to shield me from the many violations in our history. Black history, American history. These are, at least in my view, synonymous. Okay? You can get at me after the talk if you want to know why I feel that way, but I do feel that way. You may be able to intuit it at this time that Black history and American history are and have always been synonymous. There is no American history without Black contributions. There is no American history without slavery at this point. We cannot understand ourselves without Black people. So let's stop. Let's stop trying to cut Black folks off and tell them that they're the diversity. I've been told that to my face. Wow, it's so wonderful that you're here. Now we have the diversity. What is the diversity? Why are you using that article? I mean, is it a diversity? Am I a diversity or am I the diversity? I mean, if I'm the diversity, maybe I should have a title. This day is often spent claiming king. Everybody want a piece of Martin Luther King. Social media, as I said, is ablaze with quotables and platitudes. Have you noticed the receipts folks give to justify the fast and loose invocations of King's name and legacy? So much so that a governor in our great nation lifts up King's name while promoting a proposed so-called anti-woke. This is the weaponization of an imperative, stay woke, which in the Black vernacular is meant as a word of encouragement, a reminder that there are many forces allied against us and are thriving. We got to stay woke. We have to be awake to these pressures. Remember dog whistles. I never had a dog whistle, but I always kind of wanted one. But dog whistles that I know are terrible. They are alive and they are well. Woke means Black. I'm gonna say it again. Woke means Black. Let's stop playing a game out here. We know what we are talking about when we say anti-woke, and this is where woke comes to die. This is where Black people come to die. Their legacy, their history, their stories, their narrative, their voices. This place is where Black people come to die. And as you know very well, Martin Luther King Jr. was in fact murdered. And we cannot think about this as something that was just about James Earl Ray. Again, scapegoats. We love them. We love a good scapegoat. We can see the ways in which the ideological conditions that enabled, encouraged, and undergirded transatlantic slavery persist to this day. And here is where the Afro-pessimist rubber hits the road. I've shown you the Cook County Jail demographics from 2022. There are also some things that we should know, but we do not know because it is the state's business to keep us from knowing these things. Why? Because most folks are not innately cruel. I really believe that with my whole heart, that most folks are not interested actually in deliberate cruelty, in deliberate imposition, in the deliberate causing of pain in another human being. Do you know that Cook County Jail, first of all, do y'all know where Cook County Jail is? Anybody ever been? Okay, small minority. Okay, some people have checked it out, you know what I'm saying? Look it up, because it's right here. It's not even 20 minutes away. It's on California Avenue. Y'all probably know where that is. And behind the walls, a lot of things are going on that if you saw them, your stomach would be turned. Your face you would have to hide in shame, that we walk past these facilities, and I use the term very loosely, every day. People are in the neighborhood. These folks are here, but they have been disappeared. So let me tell you about some of the deplorable conditions that I now know about. Oh, and I want to pull over here really quickly and say, we need to remember, just in the same way that sexual violence is experienced by fully a quarter of people, at least, okay, a very large percentage, a very large fraction, between a sixth and a fourth of folks have somebody that they know and are close to that is behind bars right now. So when we see the statistic that says 74% We are thinking just about the bodies that are inside the walls. For every body, there is an entire network of folks that is injured by their incarceration. They have been removed. So we got lead in the cells. We have mold in the cells, black mold because of leaking walls. There is no sunlight. Can you imagine? You can't go outside. You can't breathe fresh air. The air inside, you cannot control the temperature of the air. So at some times, you may find that in your cell, it is 50 degrees. Y'all are in Chicago. Y'all know what that means. You know that point in spring where it'd be a little cold, but you want to turn off your heat because you're trying to save a few dollars and you be colder than you ever were in January. That's what's going on for folks. And we don't want to think about the gratuitous inflicted suffering. So we got foods with warning labels on them listing the health conditions that can be caused by consuming them. Sardines that cause, quote, sexual and reproductive dysfunction and harm. I don't know when the last time I heard the word harm in a warning that was put on by the government. What? I don't even think the side of my box of cigarettes said harm. They just said, if you want to smoke this, you might die, but I don't think they even used the word harm. Cups filled daily with liquids so full of technicolor dyes, they turn your urine different colors. So full of gratuitous sugars and syrups that your risk of diabetes skyrockets. These are documentable ills. Please talk to somebody on the inside. Please, I am begging you. Please talk to somebody who has been disappeared. The prisons are designed for us not to see them, yes. Not to see their similarity to where we have been as a society. As a side note, some folks have said once upon a time unto me that, white people go to jail too. White people do go to jail. They do. But the presence of white inmates does not mean that the American prison system has escaped condemnation as a heavyweight racist structure, sign of every horror we supposedly left behind after Rosa Parks stayed in her seat and Dr. King told us that he, quote, had a dream. In fact, I remain suspicious of the calm with which the judicial and carceral systems snatch up the poor of every race. If you broke, you're not getting out. You better get your bread stacked up, man. If you out here, you better get your bread stacked up. You heard it here first, folks. Remember the Poor People's Campaign of 1968? Maybe you don't know about this. That was late King. That's the king don't nobody want to talk about, late King. Can you imagine if you were living your life and let's say you're 30 years old. I'm just going to guess, something that y'all all look like y'all about, 30, maybe 28. I don't know. Can you imagine if your legacy was determined by something you did when you was 22? As if those years didn't mean anything? You hadn't learned anything, you hadn't grown, you hadn't had a chance to reflect, to examine the things that you had been working on, the things that you had been speaking and proclaiming. The Poor People's Campaign is something that happens well after the I Have a Dream speech. And nobody, and I mean, some people do, but we're in the minority. A lot of people don't want to talk about what King was on, late King. They don't want to talk about Vietnam. What? They don't want to talk about the war on poverty. They don't want to talk about that stuff. They don't want to talk about really very much that he was saying at all right before he was killed. But it's cute or whatever, he had a dream. Let's get back to prison spending. The carceral system, just like the system of slavery that enriched this great nation, is big business. Slavery was big business, y'all. Did you know that they used to insure slaves? So if your slave died, you would get some money. And that the banks in the North and in England, after the slave trade was abolished, was doing some big business in insuring slaves as property. Bankrolling, lending, making sure that the money was flowing. Again, what I tell y'all about following the money, please do it. The North cannot get off scot-free. This is preposterous. Let us not do that. So recent estimates put mass incarceration as a $120 billion industry. An industry so large that it exceeds the amount that is going back and forth in the economies of about 133 nations. That's wild business. What the hell are we doing, y'all? This is a divinity school, so I know y'all, I don't know y'all like that. Some of y'all I do know, and I know y'all on some good stuff, but like, this is a ridiculous thing that we have an entire economy devoted to this system of oppression that comes from and directly out of slavery. We could trace it. Again, y'all is smart as hell. Y'all know what it is when you read the history. From the Prison Policy Initiative, authors Peter Wagner and Bernadette Raby confirm, quote, the criminal justice system is overwhelmingly a public system. We want to talk about private prisons, and that's a mess, but private prisons make up less than 4% of this amount. And these private prisons are, in fact, extensions of the public system. The government payroll for corrections employees is over 100 times higher than the private prison industry's profits. A public system. It is important for us to remember that this is indeed a public system. This should sound familiar. I submit the beginning of de jure segregation. Plessy v. Ferguson, 1896. Right around the time when this delightful institution was, a baby. Little baby, you see, we was goo goo gaga, books. Plessy versus Ferguson happens a handful of years later, and we have Justice Henry Brown of Michigan providing the majority opinion for the record. Brown writes, we consider the underlying fallacy of the plaintiff's argument to consist in the assumption that the enforced separation of the two races stamps the colored race with a badge of inferiority. If this be so, it is not by reason of anything found in the act, but solely because the colored race chooses to put that construction upon it. The argument also assumes that social prejudice may be overcome by legislation, and that equal rights cannot be secured except by an enforced commingling of the two races. If the civil and political rights of both races be equal, one cannot be inferior to the other civilly or politically. If one race be inferior to the other socially, the Constitution of the United States cannot put them upon the same plane. This is slippery stuff here, very slippery. Dog whistles change their shape, but they do not go out of style. This is 1896. And he like, on his little dog whistle. Okay, we talking about legislation versus social and inferiority. The ways in which inferiority can have an adjective added onto it, and then it's like, oh yeah, that one is cool. What is going on? But I must assume, I hope I can assume, that I'm not telling you anything new here. I pray that I'm not telling you any new stuff. Hopefully, maybe I'm putting a little, some jokes and stuff in there, but like, I really hope that this stuff is not new to you At least I hope that you know about slavery, okay, about Jim Crow, okay, about the new Jim Crow. I hope that has been in your ear at some point in your lifetime, and hopefully like, a very long time ago, okay, hopefully before your even memory, but it's okay. But at least I may trust that I have thus far made my point. So this pessimism, this Afro-pessimism about any real progress toward equity is in fact to be expected. These gaps, these many and diverse gaps, not the diversity, but diverse, which I suppose is something else entirely, these diverse gaps will remain with us. But okay, I'm really sorry, because I know we was talking about Martin Luther King Jr. Okay. It is, after all, his birthday week. And also thank you, Coretta and Stevie Wonder, for that beautiful song. If you hadn't had it sung to you on your birthday, invite somebody black to your birthday and ask them if they will sing the Black Happy Birthday song. And at that time, you will catch your entire life. I have once heard it said, or at least something the like, that if the moral arc of the universe shall in fact bend, it will bend because we put our shoulders to the edge and heaved it until it relented under our pressure. Don't ask God for no stuff you can do yourself. Come on now. If you can do it yourself, if you can put something on it yourself, don't talk to God about that, because God will come back to you and say, what have you done though? Didn't I give you arms and legs and a mind? Maybe I didn't give you arms and legs, but you got something to work with. Something you can work with. King understood this pressure, as he pointedly observed in one of the most iconic letters in American history, written from a cell in the Birmingham jail on secreted bits of paper. He writes, "I must make two honest confessions to you, my Christian and Jewish brothers. First, I must confess that over the past few years, I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in his stride toward freedom is not the white citizens' councils or the Ku Klux Klan, but the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, quote, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action. This is what's called tone policing. I'm sure it's happening in y'all classrooms. Please don't do it. If you don't like the tone in which some truth or some perspective or some opinion is being said unto you, that doesn't make the content of the comment untrue. And it does not give you an automatic out to say, well, you can't speak to me that way, so everything you said is untrue. Come on now, people got feelings. People have strong emotions about stuff. Sometimes, you get a little tone. So, light and air is what King recommends. You cannot heal a wound if you do not expose it to light and air. And I want us to think here about the many incarcerated folks who have no access to either, who are being wounded daily, abused daily, exploited daily, okay? Because some of these Nabisco crackers and all the other types of stuff you got, lingerie, Victoria's Secret, whatever it is, was made in a jail, in a prison. And we want to say, oh, I don't know nothing about that. I don't know. But we need light, we need air in order to heal. And we need to put pressure. I'm walking and talking with my mind, stayed on freedom. I'm walking and talking with my mind, stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. was killed. King was killed. And I believe that part of the reason Martin Luther King was killed was because he kept his mind stayed on freedom. And he said in his final speech, I may not get there with you. I may not get to see us be free. And the next day, he was murdered. Tell me that ain't a prophet. Lest we find another, quote, bad apple, another convenient scapegoat to blame, and I've mentioned James Earl Ray, let us recall the FBI file a mile long on this man. And it wasn't just Martin Luther King. It was anybody that was trying to bring freedom and liberation to Black people. And that continues today. Okay? Black activists being called extremists, identity extremists. Oh, y'all. I'm like, how can you be an identity extremist? Isn't your I mean, I carry it around with me every day. Like, come on, man. Like, can I live? Okay. A truer word, okay, cannot be spoken. So we still receive, as a result of the surveillance that he experienced in his life, we still receive new details, including intimate and distressing details that reveal the man's many imperfections, to put it mildly. Ain't nobody perfect. Come on, man. We should ask ourselves the question, why do we need King to be perfect? Why do we need that? Why do we need anybody to be perfect? That's something that I've been bracing my students for. I teach a course on Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. And I've been bracing for a discussion about the wholeness, or taking a more holistic view of King's life that includes the man's weaknesses, his faults, his errors, his mistakes, and even his willful wrongdoing, to understand that the message, the prophecy, remains. It grieves me every year on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, as well as on April 4th, the day in 1968 that he was assassinated, and urban rebellions, Black communities in grief, despair, and wrath broke out in cities across the nation. Each time I remember what my mother told me about King's death when I was 4, about her use of they. She didn't say he killed him, James Earl, and then James Earl Ray killed him. Like, she said they killed him. I know for certain that he, one of the most hated Black men who ever lived in this country, come on, y'all, let's be real. People hated this man, hated his guts. You want to talk about death threats? His house being bombed, police not providing him with any kind of cover, police harassing him, folks following him, legislation being planned, injunctions being set. We want to act like everybody was like, wow, he has a dream. This is so cool. We should totally listen to him. And then LBJ was like, yeah, I'm going to listen to Martin Luther King and I'm going to sign this. But what are we talking about? Everybody wanted for this man to either go away, to die, to stop talking so strong, especially when he got into Vietnam and talking about war and peace and talking about poverty and inequality. The Constitution never mentioned slavery. You want to talk about some slick shit? Never mentioned it. Doesn't say anything about Blacks. And that fact is a fact that we should never forget. It was over 70 years after the nation was established that wretched system ended. And it was nearly a century before the end of that system that proved the birth of a new means of racial control, Jim Crow. Fast forward to 1965, nearly 100 years after the ratification of the 13th, and we see the end of Jim Crow. But the dog whistles remained, as they do. And we have many of us returned at last to the cages. And let us not forget that even esteemed black scholars, I still be looking over my shoulder because they got Henry Louis Gates Jr. What am I supposed to do? I ain't nobody. Come on, man. We can catch our issue. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Color rules. So what now? As the title of King's final book published before his death echoes, where do we go from here? And King puts a question after that colon and writes, chaos or community? Do you know Martin Luther King would have been 94 this year? And while cable news hosts marvel at the relative closeness between our time and King's time, we are left with a message from the one who will not get there with us, though he left behind prototypes to mobilize us. That is, if we refuse to accept that the dream and the small part of King's speech that made the phrase iconic and incidentally easy to repurpose in so many nefarious ways is the end of the lesson. I do not know if we will get there. I cannot now say. The conditions each day bringing fresh rediscoveries of new breeds of racialized exploitation, abuse, and commodification. It often feels too much to bear, frankly. Know that there are many of those among you who bear this burden. We are not immigrants. Please stop. Please stop calling us immigrants. I hope nobody in this room has ever done that, but they are recording me, so maybe somebody who's doing this will hear me, but please stop. We are not immigrants, and we've been here. The cyclical nature of our conundrum, this bondage, and the terror that attends it are never far from you. Never far from those who look like I do. And the gaps again loom. Yet it is from this vantage point that we can see what Obama was talking about. Yes, I'm talking about Obama because everybody was like, oh yeah, it's over. It's cool. We don't have a race problem anymore. We have a black president, it's cool. As if we, how could we not know? You know what I'm saying? I knew in 2008, I was like, oh, you don't pay for this. We are going to pay for this, but let's have a party right now because, this is great. But the price is shoot. This is like you put it on a credit card, okay, and you couldn't pay the minimum. With every year, every decade, every century that passes in this cyclical nightmare, as Malcolm X termed it, hope is more and more necessary. Hope is a discipline, says Mariame Kaba, who in an interview on the podcast Beyond Prisons shared, quote, I always tell people, for me, hope doesn't preclude feeling sadness or frustration or anger or any other emotion that makes total sense. Hope isn't an emotion, Hope is optimism. I think that for me, understanding that is really helpful in my practice around organizing, which is that I believe that there's always a potential for transformation, for change, and that is any direction, good or bad. The idea of hope being a discipline is something I heard from a nun many years ago who was talking about it in conjunction with making sure we were of the world and in the world. Living in the afterlife already in the present was kind of a form of escape, but that actually it was really, really important for us to live in the world and be of the world. You've heard, in the world, but not of it. No, come on now, come on in. Be in the world. The hope that she was talking about was this grounded hope that was practiced every day, that people actually practiced all the time. For Kaba, not only is hope a discipline for the community, but it is also imperative that we do not merely wish passively that things were better. This kind of hope is, in fact, a choice. On this, a day to celebrate King's legacy, I encourage each of you to consider the ways in which you begin the work of separating hope from a feeling. Even separating it from a well-earned sense of pessimism, as in my case. That has been the struggle for me, has been understanding that pessimism, while it makes good, logical sense, reasonable sense, how could you, come on, man, 16, 19, what? Pessimism makes a lot of sense. But hope remains a choice, and it is a choice that we have to take because there is nothing else. So I encourage you to cultivate that hope as a discipline, no matter who you are. We have this problem. I came here to talk to y'all today instead of talking to a community of Black folk for reasons. Everybody needs to cultivate this kind of hope about the situation we were in, because otherwise we will throw our hands up. It's too big. It's too big. Again, don't ask God for things that you can do yourself. Ask God for those things that we cannot do. Sustaining hope, sustaining peace, sustaining ourselves in struggle. Those things are out of our control. Ask God for those things, and you do the work. King was never about passivity, and there is a peace to be found in dogged resistance to wrong. There is much work to be done in every, and I mean every, aspect of this nation, long ago indicted by its unsung, purposefully forgotten founders. This place that I love. I'm a patriot. I love this place for its promises in spite of its unpaid debts. I cannot tell you what this will mean in your day-to-day life, your work, your personal life. I cannot say whether you will even remember what happened, today. Anything we spoke about. Maybe the food was too good, you know what I'm saying? You was thinking about the flavors that you were able to enjoy. I cannot say that you will even think about Martin Luther King Jr. as often as I do. But I can say that I'm fully confident that there is a difference you can make in each and every space you inhabit. Mind the gaps wherever you are. They are ubiquitous. You will be able to find them up here in this Divinity School, where we fought to have that man's portrait put on this wall. Gaps. Mind them and apply pressure wherever you can. Let us hold fast to the vision that there is indeed, perhaps, if we choose, a great overcoming ahead of us. How long? Not long. It ain't no harm to keep your mind stayed on freedom. It ain't no little harm to keep your mind stayed on freedom. It ain't no harm to keep your mind stayed on freedom. Ooh, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Thank you for your time. Thank you very much. Oh, should I be standing up here? What time is it? Oh, okay, we got 5 minutes and such. Look, I tried actually to answer any potential questions, ahead of time, in this little speech that I had given y'all. But I don't know, are there any comments or reflections or any things that folks would like to share? Any commitments, I fully understand if y'all like, whoa, I got the itis off the food and all that, king talk. It was too much for me. So I'll understand. But if there is any word that anyone wants to speak, I welcome it. One of the things I will say is that it was very painful for me to learn this. And I didn't only learn it when I was 4. It wasn't something that was like, oh, okay, that's some knowledge I have. Let me put it in my pocket, take it out when I need to reference it. It took me years and years, even as a child, to process that. But it was also important for me to know it. I think in a lot of ways it kept me safe, spiritually, emotionally, even psychologically safe from the anti-Black messages that we all receive. Whether we Black or not, we receive an anti-Black propaganda. And knowing that King was killed helped me. Because I was like, well, if they can kill King, who was a man who was about preaching love, anybody could get it. Anybody could get it. And so that was very useful to me. I mean, just in a practical way. And the other way in which it's helped me, I think, is as I've, begun my life, I've been, it's been many years since I've been, in these books and in this writing, but when I began my teaching life, or my life as a professor, I needed it. So it is something that grounds me and keeps me conscious of the risks of speech, the risks of resistance. It reminds me that this is not a game. You can lose your life, possibly not violently, possibly you won't be shot. I mean, you could get shot though. We on the south side of Chicago, come on y'all. You could get shot, but you could also have your life siphoned off from you. Microaggressions are not harmless, they're just not. I don't even really believe in microaggressions. As Ibram X. Kendi said, it's racial abuse. So, it kept it front of mind for me that this place was not about my thriving. It was not about my happiness. And I had to find another way. And it's that route, I think, that can take us to community as answer, can take us to our people as answer. And I found it useful in my teaching because I was able to share with my students who America really is. And it was easy because it was through that one thing, whether it was Malcolm, whether it was King. We can learn a lot about what America is about. We don't need to do, as I did, look through centuries worth of histories of slavery. We can just look even at that one moment, and it resonates, it reverberates. And so that's been really helpful too. A colleague of mine who is an American historian, white man, we call him Tyler because Tyler is always an ally. Those of you who know the meme will think it's funny. Anyway, he said to me, the Civil War never ended. We living in it right now, man. Maybe it turned into a Cold War, but it's still going on. These things remain relevant. They remain relevant to the struggle. The strategies have had to change because the tactics of continued exploitation and siphoning of resources had to change. And I think that's one of King's legacies, is that the strategies used to exclude, dominate, and otherwise steal from Black people's futures had to go on, so they just figured out another way to do it. So we see it in the 13th Amendment, of course. We see it again in the war on drugs. We see it again in the rhetoric of law and order, which is still with us now. Law and order, it's old. It's an old idea, man. So to answer the question a little more succinctly, I would say the methods are tired. They're all tired. Those of you who are not familiar with the Black English vernacular means they're worn out. They're overused. Everybody knows what's going on. Anti-woke. Okay, well, that's just another dog whistle to say we're trying to keep black people down, and you know what I'm talking about. We can't be racist now because we had to find another strategy to do the same thing. There are ways in which the modern moment, including the past 3 years of tragedy, violence, and activism, and Black death, have been educational. And I think that the Black Lives Matter movement, I have noticed that they respond organizationally and structurally to the fact that King was killed for the same type of stuff. So we can't have a head like we used to. So people are often talking about, and black people and other people are often talking about, well, we just need a great leader, you know, and King was this great leader, and so we could all follow him, which, by the way, he was hated, okay? This is already revisionist history. But even if that were true, that strategy is not going to work anymore because they will kill your ass. I mean, I'm wearing a t-shirt now that's commemorating the MOVE bombing in Philadelphia. They will bomb your offices. If you can be found, you will be annihilated if it is your business to deal with the race problem that we have. If we try to deal with the inequities, racially distributed inequities. So that, I think, is the same. But the strategies are different, just as the system itself has evolved to produce the same result, right? So it's not the grandfather clause. It's not count these jelly beans in a jar if you want to vote. Read the Constitution, recite the Constitution backwards if you want to vote. And these, look, I'm not making this up, okay? This is real deal stuff that was happening under Jim Crow. Now it's gerrymandering. We cannot keep the same strategies to fight against these types of oppressive systems if we want to make any headway at all. Because the system learns. It's like the Matrix, man, that thing be learning. And you'd be like, wow, I can't come back. We can't go back here because this funeral, this procession, this line of people waiting to see and honor King will happen again and again and again and again. For those of you who like the Matrix, just think of Neo. How many times Neo get killed? How many times did Zion have to rebuild? It's again and again and again and again. We have to change the strategies. And I think that the Black Lives Matter movement has at least, is at least making that attempt to diffuse power. And people like to complain, well, what is the message of the Black Lives Matter movement? I mean, what are they, we don't have any buddy, handling the messaging. It's like, well, King was a messenger for a movement that was way larger than his activities. We can't have that now. They'll kill the messenger. So I see wisdom in that strategical choice, yeah. In every institution of higher learning I've ever been in, the number of Black people on faculty, staff, as administrators has been in decline. It's picking up a little bit now because of George Floyd and everybody feeling guilty. They want to open their pockets a little bit to hire somebody to do some kind of the diversity work. But when we try to get beyond just the optics of the situation, we are met with many institutional barriers. So, as an example, if we, well, let me actually keep it a little bit more simple. If you invite somebody to your table, okay, let's say you're having a little function, a little party, right? You invite somebody to come. You're inviting them because the dynamic the feel, the experience of that table will be changed by their presence. You hope so. You hope they'll say something at the day. It would be kind of weird if, I mean, look at this room. We all eating together. What if the people at your table just didn't say anything to you? They had no contribution to make to the conversation. They had no opinions. They had nothing that they wanted. They had no kind of motivations in their life. That is the way that Black educational professionals are received, from my own experience and also from testimonials. And I've just started doing a bit more reading on this issue of what King would call integration. We would call inclusion. I hate that word. Who has a right to include anybody anywhere? But okay. But the barriers to really being granted a seat at the table where you can actually make change by participating in strategy, building sessions, by, giving your insights, your talents to the group, the intellectual institutional community that you're a part of, and be heard. Another thing I've noticed is that not only is it expected for folks to kind of just slide into the pre-existing culture of a place, even when that culture is primarily, white dominated. But also, in addition to that, a lot of places don't even allow Black higher educational professionals to weigh in heavily on what is needed to allow their voice, their presence at the table to actually be equitable. So there's so many stories that I've heard over the last few years of Black people, other folks of color, LGBTQ folks, all types of folks who have been kind of pushed to the side, that are now getting led into institutions to be the diversity, and are then complaining, rightfully, that there are not systems in place to either retain them, to adequately compensate them, to have some sort of redress of incidents of bias, incidents of racial abuse and exclusion. And even when we're talking about what I would think is Black folks' business, LGBTQ folks' business, we know what we're experiencing, but to not be trusted enough to make recommendations and have those recommendations be taken very seriously and addressed about our own situation, that's very demoralizing. That can be very demoralizing because it feels like, okay, well, I really have no territory of my own. I'm Black, I can't even talk about my experience of racial abuse or racism in this place, and you just tell me it didn't happen, or it's not important, or it doesn't mean anything. And that's very demoralizing. So yeah, I mean, we have a long way to go to get beyond conversations. So it's great that, this is great. I had a really good time with y'all today. This was very fun. Thank you, Anita, again for inviting me. But conversation ain't enough. It's really not. You ever go to a meeting when all they're doing is conversating at the beginning and you're like, when are we gonna actually do some work? Stop wasting my time. I have stuff to do. That's kind of how we feel. Why are we? Again, I'm not telling y'all nothing y'all don't already know. Maybe I gave you a little detail, a little, nuance here or there, but y'all already know this stuff. We don't have to talk about it. We need to do some stuff. It's time to do some stuff. Let's get a list, let's get a whiteboard and start brainstorming some solutions to these issues, because we know we have the issues. And the longer we ignore the presence of the issues, not only do they become ingrained in institutions. I mean, this institution was founded in the 19th century. There are many things that have been ingrained in this institution over so many decades. So the longer that we ignore the fact that we have problems that need addressing, the worse they get. It's just like if you don't replace your roof, that thing is leaking. Now you're gonna have mold and water damage, and you can't sit in your couch no more because there's pools of water inside of it. Let's start working on these things.
And be sincere about it.
Yeah. And I think that is a prerequisite for working on it, is to believe someone. Like we say, believe women. Believe folks who are actually in the situation to be able to give you insights on what their experience is of a place. Love you. Yeah. Well, listen, I'm noticing that it's 1:45. I don't know, maybe y'all don't have, business to attend to, but but it was such a pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much.